We followed the investigation of the murder of Ján Kuciak and Martina Kušnírová. We now already know that the people are charged, including one of the most known and important businessmen in Slovakia, Martin Kušnír. And as well, there were the political consequences for Robert Fico government, which is more or less toppled. But for you, how would you describe the situation now? What for you was like the big finding, both of the investigation, but also of the case?
Well, at the beginning, not only me, but most of the people in Slovakia were quite skeptical this murder is ever going to be properly investigated. That's one of the reasons they went to the streets and demonstrated. But the Slovak police really did a good job, and they found not only those who pulled the trigger, but also the guy who ordered the murder, and they charge him. Now we are awaiting the process with him, and we will see how the judge will decide. But I believe that the police have pretty strong evidence. What we know so far is that the businessman hired former intelligence officers to follow and do surveillance on various journalists, including Ján Kuciak. Then they collected the information, they passed it to the people who later killed Jáno and Martina, and including pictures of him, his home address, plate of his car, and those kind of things. And then the killers, the assassins, did their own surveillance of Jáno and Martina. And one evening they came to their home and killed Jáno by 2 bullets, right to his heart, and Martina by 1 bullet to her head. They left the bodies there and left.
And, you know, we had the issues of the investigations against corruption, but the fact that the journalist is killed is any person, but of course it goes beyond. So why would you explain in this particular case the removal of Ján for this guy as Kušnír was necessary, that it's so harsh that it's just the worst you can imagine of the businessman in the country which is in the EU, which kind of developing, and they're trying to, I don't know.
It's striking, yeah. You know, in Slovakia, what we understood from various investigations only happening in the last, let's say, 2 years, the problem is that we are not talking anymore about the state capture. We are talking about the Mafia state, when actually organized crime people are very well in bed with politicians, top politicians, and with business people. And the mixture of it is very strong, and it's very difficult to break it. So actually at this position, the businessman Marián Kušnír believed he is untouchable, that he has so much of compromise on politicians and other people that they wouldn't touch him, that they would rather cover his back and lead the investigation nowhere.
So maybe you would explain, because that's what's happening now. It's 2018, 2019. It's not early 90s. And
No.
for some time we thought, especially after like EU accession, like 90s are over, that of course there is a high level corruption, the money laundered, but everything is moved to kind of this offshore business. It's not that tough that the organized crime is connected to the government, which is a bit too much. So what we also found from this case for the region and this thing,
Yeah.
maybe we just overlooked it?
Yes, we didn't see it coming. You know, we've been talking about organized crime in Slovakia, but mostly on this economical level, like white-collar crime. But we really didn't see it coming, that Jáno could be killed. And it was shocking for all the region. And we probably should be much more aware of the fact that Mafia is present everywhere here, and organized crime. It's just, you know, they are just really careful not to be so visible. We can't expect that the member of organized crime will drive golden Mercedes, shoot into the air and wear some kind of a tracksuit or Italian suit and actually look and act as a member of Mafia. It's not happening anymore. They are staying way low below the radar of normal people, quite often of police as well. So you wouldn't believe that this guy could be a member of organized crime because he doesn't look like the stereotypic member of organized crime.
The story you were working, also you started to work with this, with Ján, was about the connection of the Slovak government and Ndrangheta,
Yes.
Italian mafia, and there were things confirmed later. What is happening with this story and also with this connection?
You know, the protagonist of this story, Antonino Vadala, he was extradited to Italy where he is charged for mafia affiliation and drug trade. And so it's up to Italian prosecution and up to Italian judge to find out if he's guilty or not. But because the Italian anti-mafia police put a special agent on this deal and on this network where Antonino Vadala was part of it, they probably consider it high profile and they probably have quite a strong evidence.
So what is the connection of Vadala also to, for instance, Kočner? If it's
We didn't
there?
find any connection,
Okay.
but the probability...
Yeah, just explain these two stories much, because was Ján killed because of writing about Vadala or of Kočner?
Yeah, those are two things. We can't really see how much they are connected. Probably there is some connection, but so far we were not able really to prove it. First story that we've been doing for 18 months before Ján was killed was about how Italian mafia Ndrangheta has close ties to the Prime Minister of Slovakia. Before publishing it, Ján was killed, then we were rushing to publish it as soon as possible because the Italian mafia was one of the strong leads of possible, people who murdered Ján and Martina. As it turned out later, those were different guys. It was Marián Kočner, but also Ján Kuciak was writing the stories, investigations about Marián Kočner and his business, quite shady business. So it turned out he was the one who was really annoyed by Ján's reporting and ordered the murder. So far, he was not proven guilty, but he's one of the lead suspects.
How big his persona is for Slovakia, for Slovakian policy and the Slovakian business?
His persona is kind of iconic for Slovakian business, and not only business, also the ties, the links between business and politicians. So he's really important, and he was, like the person who was like embodying everything what was wrong with Slovakia since its independence in 1993.
And then coming to the second story with Ndrangheta and connection to Fico, what do we know so far about that? What we have found out thanks to also your investigations?
Well, yeah, apart from the fact that the assistant or advisor of then Prime Minister Robert Fico was shareholder and has access to the company accounts of Antonino Vadala's companies, we also found out that there was direct exchange, phone exchange, like telephone call between Roberto Fico and Antonino Vadala. So they probably didn't need the middleman, in this case a middlewoman, to broker their links.
And in these things, what was the benefit for Fico in this story? Was it just a story about subsidies? Because Vadala is both connected. The initial case was about some kind of getting into the EU subsidies. At the same time, he's now charged with drug smuggling.
Yes.
So this could be separate things because criminals can do a lot of different kind of variety of the things, but can you also connect these dots?
Yeah, the benefit of Roberto Fico and his relation to Antonino Vadala according to my opinion, was the money. Robert Fico was known for being able to collect the money of the books for the party. And probably Antonino Varela was the one who was able to provide him this kind of a money. But it was not only Robert Fico who had connection to him, it was chief of the state security. It was, for example, the border patrol, and those people who are in green energy subsidies, that there were much more links to the government officials than just the prime minister.
And then where the drug story comes, or it's just like a separate business?
If you are talking...
And even if it's there, separate,
Yeah.
like, we'll
No,
also
it's
interesting to understand.
actually kind of connected. Organized crime, people, and especially members of Ndrangheta are very keen on getting the money anywhere, starting from EU subsidies to green energy subsidies to drugs, to whatever. What we understood is that Antonino Varela wanted to go back to Italy, to return to Italy and to enter the really high-profile cocaine business. So he was collecting money. He was, forming companies, and then he was layering the money. What he provided, what he offered to people doing the cocaine trade was that he is going to use his companies to take care about the logistics of the drugs. His companies are going to buy shrimps in Ecuador, and the cocaine is going to be hidden under the shrimps. And then he's going to send the money to the company that will give it to narcos in Ecuador.
Which really making this story global. And what was also important to mention, to what extent, in both cases, the intelligence and security service and law enforcement was involved. Some of the people who were connected to the criminals. Also, what we also learned how deep were this also connections. I also would mention, because we're covering Eastern Europe, not into the depths, but still for Ukrainians, let's say. It's kind of example. These are the countries which move towards EU. We're speaking so much about how make them more transparent, and somehow for us it was also the question that the idea that some things worked.
Yeah, in this case we probably should get back to Marian Kočner, because he had much better ties to police forces than Varela did. He was, really directly getting information from police investigations. So I think this is just, clear illustration how much power he got and how he dealt with it.
We started our conversation that somehow police done the good job, and people were skeptical. We have a new government new president in Slovakia. At this stage, what do you think where do you see the hopes? Are really things systematically changed? Or where we can speak about that at least, for instance, we can hope about some cleaning of the law enforcement, at least.
Yeah, Zuzana Čaputová really embodies the hope of Slovak people, and they all, the expectations are really high. The problem is, in Slovakia, the president doesn't have such a power to do it. It must be the government. President is much more like the icon of the state, or the one who can make nice speeches to the people, but does not really have such a power to really change, for example, the judiciary system or the police forces. It must be the government.
You do these transborder investigations, and in this case we saw how, for instance, in case of Varela, yes, the crime is international. It used to be, but they are also benefiting from a lot of things. Do you see that on the level of the European Union, also the police is getting more kind of ready to investigate these international transborder cases?
What I understood is that yes, that these days it's much easier to exchange the information cross-border within EU, and they are really getting good assistance by the Europol if they need to help with something. So I hope, yes, it's developing.
At this point, in those two stories, where should we look at so far? In the court cases, what are now the important things to follow, that these stories isn't like just forgotten?
Both stories are followed by the media pretty well. So I think that there are not so many public information about it apart from the media, because part of the stories are based on sources that we can't expose and you probably won't get access to them. Not so much is visible in the judicial documents, but just follow the media and you will see what's going on.
And the courts?
You can. If you speak Italian, you would definitely find out more about the Vadala case.